My beloved child, don't skip this fictional relationship story, because tonight someone stands at a crossroads where one decision could change the direction of an entire life. Stay until the very end, because what seems like the biggest mistake may become the greatest lesson if truth is spoken before it's too late. It is just after midnight. The streets are quiet. Rain gently taps against the windows of a small apartment. Across the room, someone sits alone, staring at a phone screen that has remained untouched for hours. In this fictional story, they have convinced themselves that walking away is the only choice left. Months of misunderstandings, pride, silence, and fear have slowly built a wall between two hearts that once trusted each other completely. Now, with one tap of a button, they are ready to send a message that will end everything forever. Their finger hovers above the screen. They whisper, "Maybe they'll be happier without me." They believe they are protecting the other person. But deep inside, their heart is quietly breaking. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. At that very same moment, miles away, the other person cannot sleep either. They keep replaying old conversations. They reread messages from happier days. They wonder how two people who once dreamed of forever became strangers without either of them truly wanting it. A close friend notices the sadness and asks, "If you had one more chance to speak honestly, what would you say?" The answer comes almost immediately. "I would tell them that I never stopped caring. I only stopped believing they still cared about me." Those words reveal the true problem. Not a lack of love, but a lack of honest communication. Back in the apartment, the phone vibrates unexpectedly. Before the goodbye message is sent, another notification appears. It isn't from the other person. It is an old photo memory. Two smiling faces. A handwritten note beneath it reads, "Promise me that if life ever becomes difficult, we'll talk before we walk away." The message freezes them. Their hand begins to shake. They realize something they had forgotten. Promises deserve one last chance before permanent decisions are made. Instead of pressing send, they lock the phone and take a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, they ask themselves a different question. Have I truly said everything that needs to be said, or have I only assumed the answer? Outside, the rain begins to slow. The clouds start to clear. And somewhere beyond the darkness, a conversation that could change everything is quietly waiting to begin. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional relationship story, because tonight both hearts are standing only one conversation away from changing everything. Stay until the very end, because sometimes the greatest mistake is not losing love, it is allowing fear to speak louder than the truth. The morning arrives. Neither of them has slept. The goodbye message was never sent. But the silence still remains. Both are waiting. Both are hoping. Both are afraid to be the first one to speak. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. The main character picks up the phone several times. Each time they unlock the screen, they put it back down again. What if they don't want to hear from me anymore? That single thought keeps repeating inside their mind. Miles away, the other person is fighting the very same battle. They open an old conversation. They type a message. Delete it. Type another. Delete that one too. Hours pass. Neither realizes that both are trapped by the exact same fear. Late that afternoon, an elderly neighbor notices the main character sitting alone outside. The neighbor quietly sits beside them. Without asking questions, they simply smile and say, "Do you know what I've learned after 50 years of marriage?" The main character looks up. The neighbor continues. Most relationships aren't destroyed by one big mistake. They're slowly weakened by small misunderstandings that no one is brave enough to talk about. Those words settle deeply in their heart. For the first time, they stop asking, "What if I'm rejected?" Instead they ask, "What if silence is the real mistake?" With trembling hands, they finally open the phone. Not to argue. Not to blame. Not to demand answers. Only to speak honestly. The message is short. "I don't know where we stand anymore. But before either of us makes a decision we'll regret, I'd like one honest conversation. No expectations. No pressure. Just honesty." Their finger pauses. Then they press send. The phone becomes completely still. 1 minute passes. 5 minutes. 10. No reply. Doubt begins returning. Just as they convince themselves it was too late, the screen lights up. A single message appears. "I've been waiting for this message for longer than you'll ever know." The main character's eyes fill with tears. Not because every problem has disappeared, but because hope has returned. That evening, they agree to meet in a quiet cafe where they once spent hours dreaming about the future. Neither knows what tomorrow will bring. Neither knows whether love can be rebuilt. But both know one thing. No matter what happens next, their future will no longer be decided by fear. It will be decided by truth. And as the evening sun slowly disappears beyond the horizon, both hearts realize something extraordinary. The biggest mistake was never almost saying goodbye. The biggest mistake was believing they had to face their pain alone. Now, the conversation that could change both of their lives is finally about to begin. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional relationship story, because tonight the conversation both hearts feared for so long is finally about to happen. Stay until the very end, because one honest moment can sometimes heal years of misunderstanding. The following evening arrives. The cafe is exactly as they remember it. The same wooden tables. The same soft music. The same corner by the window where they once dreamed about the future together. This time, however, neither knows what to expect. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. The main character arrives first. Every passing minute feels like an hour. Then, the cafe door slowly opens. Their eyes meet for the first time in months. No dramatic music. No rushed embrace. Only silence. A silence filled with emotions that words cannot immediately express. The other person quietly sits down. After a long pause, they softly say, "Thank you for asking to meet." The main character smiles nervously. "Thank you for coming." Another silence follows. Then the main character finally asks the question that has lived inside their heart for so long. "When did we stop talking honestly?" The other person lowers their eyes. A tear slowly rolls down their face. "I don't think we ever stopped loving each other. I think we slowly became afraid of telling each other what we were feeling." Those words change everything. For the next several hours, they speak openly. About the misunderstandings. About the assumptions. About the fears they had hidden behind polite smiles. One admits, "Every time you became quiet, I thought you were losing interest." The other gently replies, "Every time you pulled away, I thought you needed space, so I stayed silent." They both pause. Then unexpectedly laugh through their tears. The painful truth becomes clear. Neither wanted distance. Both had simply misunderstood each other's silence. As the evening continues, they realize how many important conversations never happened. Not because they didn't care, but because both believed the other already knew how they felt. The main character quietly reaches into their bag and takes out a small notebook. Inside are dozens of unsent letters. Letters written during lonely nights. Letters filled with apologies. Hope. Gratitude. Love. The other person slowly turns each page. By the final letter, tears are falling freely. They whisper, "I spent months believing you had forgotten me." The main character gently shakes their head. "Not a single day passed without thinking about you." The cafe grows quiet around them. Outside, rain begins falling gently against the windows. For the first time in a long while, neither feels alone. As they prepare to leave, the other person softly says, "Before we decide what happens next, let's promise each other one thing." The main character nods. "Anything." A gentle smile appears. No more guessing. No more silence. Whatever the future holds, we'll face it with honesty. The main character smiles back. "I promise." They walk out into the cool evening air. Side by side. Not because every problem has been solved, but because both hearts have finally chosen truth over fear. And neither of them realizes that tomorrow will reveal one final truth. A truth that will test whether the promises they made tonight are strong enough to shape the future they once dreamed about. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional relationship story, because tonight both hearts will face the one question they have avoided for far too long. Stay until the very end, because real love is not proven by beautiful words, it is proven by the courage to make wise and honest choices. The morning after their heartfelt conversation, neither of them feels the need to rush. For the first time in months, there are no unanswered questions. No assumptions. Only honesty. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. Over the next few weeks, they continue talking. Not about the past alone, but about the future. They discuss their dreams, their fears, the mistakes they both made, Instead of blaming each other, each one accepts responsibility for their own silence. One evening, while walking through a quiet park, the other person suddenly stops. They take a deep breath and say, "I almost made the biggest mistake of my life." The main character looks at them. "What mistake?" They reply softly, "I almost let fear convince me that giving up was easier than having one honest conversation. If we had never met that day, I would have spent the rest of my life believing a story that wasn't true." The main character smiles gently. "And I almost believed silence was the same as rejection. We were both wrong." They continue walking. The evening breeze moves through the trees. For the first time in a long while, the future feels hopeful instead of frightening. Days later, they decide to step away from constant texting and social media. Instead, they spend time getting to know each other again in simple ways. They share coffee. They take long walks. They volunteer together at a local community center. Slowly, trust begins to grow. Not because everything is perfect, but because both are choosing honesty every single day. One afternoon, an elderly volunteer smiles as he watches them working together. He quietly says, "Strong relationships aren't built by finding perfect people. They're built by imperfect people who keep choosing respect, patience, and truthful communication." Those words stay with them. Months pass. The misunderstandings that once felt impossible now seem like distant memories. They no longer measure love by dramatic moments. They measure it by consistency. By showing up. By listening. By keeping promises. As the sun sets one evening, they return to the same place where they almost walked away from each other forever. The main character quietly says, "This place reminds me of how close we came to losing everything." The other person smiles. "Maybe it also reminds us how powerful one honest conversation can be." They both laugh softly. Looking toward the horizon, they realize something beautiful. The biggest mistake was never almost losing each other. The biggest mistake would have been refusing to learn from what happened. Now, with wiser hearts and a stronger foundation, they are ready to take the next step together. And neither of them knows that the next chapter will bring the happiest surprise of all, a future built not on fear or fantasy, but on trust, honesty, and love that grows stronger with every passing day. My beloved child, don't skip this fictional relationship story, because this is the final chapter. The chapter where fear finally loses its power, truth brings peace, and two hearts discover what real love is truly made of. Stay until the very end, because the greatest endings are not created by chance. They are created by people who choose honesty every single day. A year passes. The seasons change. Life moves forward. Looking back, both of them can hardly believe how close they came to letting one misunderstanding end a beautiful future. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. The relationship they almost lost has become stronger than either of them imagined. Not because they never disagree, but because they no longer allow silence to replace conversation. Whenever fear appears, they talk. Whenever misunderstandings arise, they listen. Whenever life becomes difficult, They face it together. One quiet evening, they return to the little cafe where everything changed. They choose the same table by the window. The same place where they first decided to stop assuming and start communicating. The main character smiles and softly says, "Do you remember the message I almost never sent?" The other person laughs gently. "If you hadn't sent it, we wouldn't be sitting here today." They both fall silent for a moment. Not an uncomfortable silence. A peaceful one. The kind that exists between two people who trust each other completely. Months later, surrounded by family and close friends, they celebrate a joyful engagement. There are no dramatic promises. Only sincere words. The main character takes their partner's hand and says, "I don't promise a perfect life. I promise that we'll never let fear speak louder than honesty again." Their partner smiles with tears of happiness. "And I promise that no matter how difficult life becomes, we'll always choose conversation before goodbye." The room fills with applause. Family members embrace them. Friends celebrate. Everyone can see that this love was not built on fantasy. It was built on patience, forgiveness, and trust. Later that night, they walk beneath a sky filled with stars. The breeze is gentle. The world feels peaceful. The main character quietly whispers, "The biggest mistake wasn't almost losing you." Their partner looks over with a smile. "What was it?" They answer, believing that fear deserved the final word. Hand in hand, they continue walking toward the future. No longer afraid of what tomorrow might bring. Because they know they will face every challenge together. As the first light of dawn appears, they realize the greatest lesson of their journey. Real love is not about never making mistakes. It is about having the courage to admit them, learn from them, forgive one another, and keep choosing each other with kindness and honesty. And in this fictional story, the ending everyone hoped for finally arrives. Two hearts that almost walked away instead build a life filled with trust. Two families become one. Old wounds become distant memories. Every misunderstanding becomes a lesson. Every tear becomes a reminder of how precious love truly is. They don't simply find happiness. They create it, one honest conversation at a time. And as they step into their new life together, they know the greatest chapter has only just begun.